One day, a man stood by the river and realized it was never the same river twice, and neither was he. He came every morning to sit in silence, listening to the flow of the current, watching the ripples, the debris that passed, the changing shapes of water meeting stone. But this morning was different. Something in his heart stirred with the deep realization that the river had changed overnight, and so had he. The thoughts in his mind, the aches in his bones, even the emotions in his chest. None of it was exactly the same as the day before. And in that moment, standing barefoot on the bank, he quietly asked himself, if everything changes, what can I trust? That question, though simple on the surface, is one of the most profound a human being can ask. My dear friends, if you've ever sat in the quiet of your own heart and asked something like that, then today's message is for you. Over the years, I've walked the Buddhist path not just with books and study, but with old monks who spoke more through silence than words, with mothers who lit incense and whispered prayers for their children, with young men who suffered, lost everything, and still bowed before the Buddha with tears on their face. And all of them, in some way or another, were grappling with that one great riddle. What can I trust when everything around me changes? Maybe you've asked this too. Maybe life didn't turn out the way you planned. The job disappeared, the person you loved drifted away, your health took a turn, or maybe the world just feels unstable. News, politics, relationships, even your own feelings, they change like weather in the mountains. And here you are, in the middle of the storm, wondering where to plant your feet. I want to tell you something that Buddhism offers not just as a belief, but as a lived path. It tells us, yes, everything changes. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system. It's not a punishment, not chaos. It is the law of reality. And more than that, the very fact that everything changes is what makes awakening possible. You see, if things were fixed, stuck, permanent, we would be too. But because things move, we can grow. Because pain doesn't last forever. Healing can come. Because death exists, birth has meaning, and because people change, you too can transform. That's not just poetry. That's the Dharma. But let's be honest, it's not easy. It's not easy to trust anything when the ground beneath you keeps shifting. Even for monks who've shaved their heads and given up everything, there are moments of doubt, even for researchers like me, who've studied sutras for decades. There are days when the heart trembles and the mind says, where's my anchor? So today, in this quiet time we share, I want to walk with you through this beautiful and difficult truth. I want us to explore the nature of change, our resistance to it, and ultimately what the Buddha taught us to trust in the middle of it all. This isn't a lecture. This is a conversation between two human beings searching for what's real. So take a breath. Let the world slow down for a moment and join me just as you are, wherever you are. Because if everything changes, then let's discover together what remains. Section 1, Churasuwant. The nature of change, Anicca. Let's begin with something simple, but powerful. Look around you. Nothing stays the same. The trees outside your window, they grow, they shed, they bloom, they die. The sky changes its colors hour by hour. Even your own body, your hands, your knees, your voice, none of it is exactly as it was 10 years ago. Not even yesterday. Now, the Buddha saw this very clearly. In fact, one of the very first truths he taught after his great awakening was what we call Anicca, impermanence. That's the Pali word for everything changes. And when he said everything, he meant it. Your thoughts, your emotions, your job, your family, your country, your reputation, your pain, your joy. Everything is changing all the time. Now, I know for many people, especially when you've lived a long life, that might sound obvious. Of course things change. We say, we've watched children grow up and move away. We've buried people we love. We've seen governments rise and fall. So yes, on some level, we all know that nothing lasts forever. But the Buddha wasn't just pointing out the obvious. He was saying something deeper. He was telling us that the very nature of life is built on change. It's not a mistake. It's not something to fix. It's not something to be angry about. It's reality itself. And that, my friends, is both freeing and frightening. Let me give you a simple example. Think of a candle. You light it, and slowly the wax melts. The flame dances. The shape of the candle shortens. If someone asked you, is this the same candle as it was a minute ago, what would you say? You might say, well, yes and no. And that's true. It looks like the same candle. But it's burning. It's changing. That is what it means to exist. It means to change. Now apply that to yourself. Are you the same person you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Of course not. Your memories, your opinions, even the way your knees feel when you stand up, it's all different now. And yet, there's still a you here, a consciousness watching it all unfold. So what does this mean for us spiritually? It means we can stop expecting things to stay the same. We can stop clinging to the way things used to be or demanding that the present never end. Because it will. That's not being negative. That's being honest. And when we accept that truth, a strange thing happens. We become peaceful. We stop swimming upstream. We learn to flow with the river. The Buddha often used nature to teach these truths. One of my favorite stories is when he picked up a beautiful flower in silence during a teaching. He didn't say a word. He just held the flower. Most of the monks were confused, but one monk, named Mahakashyapa, smiled. He understood that the flower, in its quiet, delicate beauty, was already teaching the Dharma, because the flower would bloom, fade, and fall, just like us, just like everything. You see, impermanence is not meant to depress us. It's meant to wake us up, to remind us to love this moment, because it won't last, to remind us to forgive, because tomorrow might not come, to remind us to be gentle, because everyone we meet is carrying something they're losing. So let me ask you gently, what are you holding on to right now, hoping it won't change? A relationship, a sense of control, an old version of yourselves. Whatever it is, you don't have to throw it away. Just hold it loosely. Know that it's a visitor, not a resident. Welcome it, but don't try to keep it forever. This is the beauty of Anicca. It breaks our illusions, but it gives us something far better: clarity. And with that clarity, we can begin to ask the next honest question. Why does change hurt so much? That's what we'll explore next. Section 2, our human struggle against change. Let's speak from the heart now. If we understand that everything changes, why does it still hurt so much when things do? It's because, my dear friends, we don't want things to change, not really. At least, not the things we like. When we're sick, we want to get better. When we're in pain, we want it to end. But when things are going well, when we feel strong, when someone loves us, when the sun is shining, we want it to stay just like that, forever. And that right there is where suffering begins. The Buddha called it dukkha. That's the second of the 3 marks of existence. After anicca, dukkha is often translated as suffering, but it's more than just pain. It's that feeling of discomfort, of restlessness, of unease that comes when life doesn't go the way we want. Even good things, but when they start to slip away, cause dukkha. Let me tell you a story that I think says it all. There once was a mother named Kisa Gautami. She had a baby boy, her only child, and she loved him more than life itself. But one day, the child grew sick and died. Kisa went mad with grief. She carried the lifeless body through the village, begging anyone to give her medicine that could bring him back. Eventually, someone told her, go to the Buddha. He might help you. So she came before the Buddha, weeping, pleading for help. And the Buddha, with deep compassion, said, yes, I will help you. But first, bring me a handful of mustard seeds from a home where no one has ever lost a loved one. Kisa went door to door, and at every house they offered her mustard seeds. But when she asked, have you ever lost someone you love? The answer was always yes. A father, a daughter, a friend, a husband. Every home had known grief. And slowly, Kisa Gautami realized she was not alone. Her suffering was not a mistake. It was part of the human experience. And with that wisdom, She returned to the Buddha not with mustard seeds, but with an open heart. She became his student. She let go, and she began to heal. That story has stayed with me for many years, because it reminds us we suffer not just because of change, but because we fight change. We want life to obey our wishes, but life doesn't work that way. Imagine holding a block of ice in your hand. You love its shape, its clarity, the coolness of it, but it starts to melt, and the tighter you hold it, the faster it melts. That's what clinging does. It speeds up the pain. It turns change into suffering. Now, don't get me wrong, grief is natural. Loss hurts. Tears are holy. Buddhism doesn't ask us to be emotionless. It asks us to be honest, to see clearly, to stop pretending that we can hold back the tide. There's a phrase I've often used with my students: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. In other words, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So if you've ever felt betrayed by life, if you've looked in the mirror and missed the person you used to be, if you've watched someone you love fade away, then you already understand what the Buddha taught. And you are not weak for struggling. You are human. You are alive. The path forward is not to deny change, but to turn toward it, gently, with wisdom and compassion. That's what we'll explore next. Why the things most people put their trust in, the things we cling to, often leave us disappointed, and how that disappointment, if we let it, can be the beginning of something sacred, something unshakable. Section 3. What most people trust and why it fails. Let me ask you something gently. What have you trusted in your life? Some of us trusted our bodies until they got older and slower. Some trusted love until it left. Others trusted money until it ran out. Maybe you trusted a friend, a leader, a system, or even your own strength. And maybe, like so many others, you found out the hard way that these things don't last. Now, I'm not saying they're bad. Love, strength, money, reputation. These things can be useful. They can even be beautiful. But here's the truth: they are not stable. They are not solid ground. They're more like shadows in the afternoon there for a while, and then gone without warning. Think about it. Have you ever had a season in life where everything seemed to be going well? Maybe your health was good. Your children were doing fine. The bills were paid, and you felt at peace. And then one phone call, one diagnosis, one change, and it was like the rug got pulled out from under you. That's what happens when we put our trust in things that change. And unfortunately, most people do. We trust the house we live in, but one storm can shake it. We trust our appearance, but the mirror tells a different story each year. We trust our careers, but companies close and people get replaced. Even the people we love most, bless them, they change too. Sometimes they leave. Sometimes they pass away. Sometimes we change and grow apart. And so we build our lives like castles in the sand. They look strong. They feel solid. But the tide always comes. Now, the Buddha wasn't judging people for doing this. He wasn't blaming anyone. He was simply saying, this is why you suffer, because you're leaning on things that cannot hold you. He called it upadana, grasping, clinging, like grabbing at smoke or trying to hold the wind. The more we cling, the more we fear losing what we cling to. And that fear becomes the seed of suffering. Let me share a little story. A man once came to the Buddha and said, "Master, I want happiness." The Buddha looked at him and said, "First remove the I that's ego, then remove the want that's desire. What you're left with is happiness." It's a simple story, maybe even too simple, but it carries a truth we often forget. Our unhappiness often comes from what we think we need in order to be happy. The status, the control, the guarantee that tomorrow will look like today. But life doesn't give guarantees. So if we're going to find real peace, lasting peace, we have to stop trusting the untrustworthy. That doesn't mean we don't enjoy life. It doesn't mean we become cold or distant. It means we stop building our lives on what we hope won't change and start building them on what already doesn't. You might be wondering, well then, what can I trust? And that's the right question. It's not a question of giving up hope. It's a question of shifting it. of turning your heart from the temporary to the timeless, from what you can't control to what you can. That brings us to the turning point, the moment when the spiritual journey really begins. Section 4. The turning point. The question that awakens the seeker. I want you to imagine something with me. It's the middle of the night. Everything is quiet. There's no one around. And you're lying awake in your bed, staring at the ceiling. And for a moment, you ask a question you can't unask. What can I really count on in this life? That moment, quiet, raw, and deeply personal, is what I call the turning point. It's not dramatic, no thunder, no flashing lights, just a simple, honest question rising up from the middle of your heart. It often comes after loss, after disappointment, after you've tried everything the world promised would make you happy, and it didn't. This is the moment when the spiritual seeker is born. You see, many people live their whole lives reacting, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, seeking approval, fearing rejection. But a seeker stops. A seeker looks. A seeker asks. The Buddha himself was once a prince. He had wealth, comfort, power, and endless entertainment. But when he saw an old man, a sick man, and a corpse for the first time, something broke inside him. That break became his awakening. He couldn't go back to sleep. He had to find out, is there something deeper? Something I can trust that won't die, won't age, won't decay. So he left everything behind. Not because he hated the world, but because he loved truth more. Now I'm not telling you to walk away from your life. You don't have to shave your head or live in the forest to begin this journey. The real journey begins inside, right where you are, with your next breath, with your next act of courage. And it starts by asking the question you've been avoiding. What is real? What is lasting? What is worth giving my heart to? Some people are afraid of this question. They think it leads to despair. But the truth is, this question is a doorway. It doesn't take you into darkness. It takes you into clarity, into the beginning of faith, not blind faith, but deep trust based on wisdom. Because once you see clearly what you can't rely on, you're finally free to start looking for what you can. And here's the good news. The Buddha didn't just leave us with the problem. He gave us a path that doesn't depend on things going your way, a path that grows with you through every season of life. We'll explore that next, because if everything changes, what can you trust? The Buddha answered that question not with theories, but with experience, with a path, with a way forward. And that's what I'll share with you in the next part of our journey. Section 5. What the Buddha trusted the Dharma as an anchor. Let me take you back to a quiet night, over 2,500 years ago. A man sat under a tree, not just any tree, but what we now call the Bodhi tree. He had given up everything: comfort, home, family. He had tried all the paths: luxury, starvation, teachings from other gurus. Nothing brought him peace. So that night, he sat still. He made a promise: I will not rise from this spot until I find the truth. And before the sun rose, Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha, the awakened one. Now here's what I want you to hear. The Buddha didn't awaken to a god in the sky. He didn't find magic. He didn't discover a religion in the way we usually think of religion. What he found was something deeper, a law, a pattern, a truth that had always been there. He called it the Dharma. The Dharma is not something he invented. It's something he saw clearly, and it changed everything. The Dharma is the way things are. It's the law of nature, not a rule written in a book, but the rhythm of life itself, like gravity, like the seasons, like cause and effect. It's the truth that everything is connected. Everything changes, and everything we do has consequences. The Buddha trusted the Dharma. Why? Because it didn't depend on opinion. It didn't depend on culture, or power, or time. Whether you believe in it or not, the Dharma is working. Just like a seed turns into a tree when planted and watered. The Dharma says if you plant peace, you harvest peace. If you plant anger, you harvest suffering. This is why the Dharma is trustworthy. It doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't change its mind. Now I want to be careful here. When I say trust the Dharma, I'm not saying just memorize a bunch of teachings. No, I'm saying live by it, feel it, test it, because the Dharma invites you to see for yourself. There's a beautiful story in the scriptures about this. One day, a group of villagers came to the Buddha and said, "There are so many teachers, so many paths. They all say they're right. How do we know who to believe?" And the Buddha didn't say, "Just believe me." He said, "Don't believe anything just because a teacher says it, or because it's written in scripture, or because everyone else believes it. Test it. See if it leads to peace, to clarity, to compassion. If it does, then it is the truth." Isn't that amazing? The Buddha didn't ask for blind faith. He asked for honest observation. That's what makes the Dharma an anchor. It's not a promise of comfort. It's a map of truth. And the more you walk with it, the more you start to see it everywhere. In your relationships, in your health, in your thoughts, in your breath. There's another story I love, maybe you've heard it before. The Buddha once said his teachings were like a raft. You use the raft to cross the river, but once you've crossed, you don't carry the raft on your back forever. You leave it behind. The teachings aren't meant to be heavy. They're meant to carry you to freedom. So, what did the Buddha trust him? He trusted the Dharma, the living truth, not because someone told him to, but because he saw it, he lived it, and he became it. And that, dear friends, is what we can begin to trust too. Not a belief, but a path. Not a dogma, but a way of being that brings peace even when the world shakes. And now that we've touched at this quiet, steady foundation, I want to show you how the Buddha described the path that walks hand in hand with that truth. It's practical, it's human, and it's something you can begin wherever you are right now. Section 6. Trusting the Noble Eightfold Path. Let's say you've realized the truth that the things of this world are always changing. Let's say you feel it in your bones, but you're not ready to give up. You want to live with wisdom. You want to find peace not in the next life, but in this one. So you ask, how do I live now? That's exactly the question the Buddha answered when he gave us the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is like a walking stick for the soul. It doesn't remove all of life's hills and valleys, but it helps you walk them with balance. The Eightfold Path is made of 8 practices. Think of them like steps, not rules, not commandment steps, and they don't have to be perfect. You don't have to master them overnight. You just take one honest step at a time. Let me walk you through them gently. The first is right view. This means seeing life clearly, understanding that life includes suffering, change, and cause and effect. It's the view that opens your eye, not a view based on fear, but on wisdom. It's the view that says, I understand that clinging causes pain. I understand that kindness matters. Next is right intention. This is the heart behind your actions. Are you acting from love or fear, from greed or generosity? Right intention means choosing honesty over deception, letting go over grasping, and kindness over cruelty. Then comes right speech. And oh, this one matters so much. What we say can heal or harm. Right speech means speaking truthfully, gently, with purpose. It means no gossip, no lies, no hurtful words. Think of how powerful words or the one sentence can make someone's day or break their heart. Fourth is right action. This is about how we live. It means not harming others, not stealing, not engaging in destructive behavior. It's choosing to live in a way that brings peace, not regret. Then there's right livelihood. This is important, especially in today's world. The Buddha taught that we should earn a living in a way that doesn't harm others. That means no cheating, no dealing in weapons or harmful trades. Our work should help, not hurt. The sixth is right effort. This doesn't mean pushing yourself to exhaustion. It means gently, steadily turning your energy toward what is wholesome, like tending a garden, pulling out the weeds of anger and planting seeds of patience. Next comes right mindfulness. This is the practice of being fully present, not lost in the past, not worried about the future, just here, in your breath, in your body, in the taste of your tea, in the sound of the wind. Mindfulness is the medicine for a restless heart. And finally, right concentration. This is the deep stillness that comes from meditation. It's not about forcing your mind to be empty. It's about gently focusing it so you can see clearly, feel deeply, and rest in peace. Now, you might think, that's a lot to remember, but don't worry. You don't have to do it all at once. Just start with one. Maybe today you practice right speech. Tomorrow you pay attention to right effort. These steps are friends, not judges. They walk with you. They don't push you. And here's the beautiful part. The more you walk this path, the more you begin to trust it. Because it works. It doesn't promise you a perfect life. It promises you a wise life. A life where, even in the middle of change, you are steady. Even when things fall apart, you are still kind. Even when you're uncertain, you are not lost. So if everything in your world is shifting, if you're not sure what tomorrow will bring, then come back to this path. Come back to these 8 steps. They are your steady ground. Not because life will stop changing, but because you will stop running from it. The Eightfold Path is not the end. It is the beginning of trust. Not trust in luck or fate, but trust in the deep goodness that awakens when you live in harmony with truth. And that, my friends, is a trust no one can take from you. Section 7. Trusting the present moment, the power of mindfulness. Let me ask you something simple. Where are you right now? You might say, I'm sitting in my chair, or I'm in my home, but I want to go deeper. Where is your mind? Is it here? Or is it still thinking about something that happened yesterday? Or maybe worrying about something that might happen tomorrow? You see, most people are not really living in the present moment. Their bodies are here, but their minds are somewhere else. And that's why so many of us feel anxious, distracted, or even lost. The Buddha understood this long before we had words like stress or mental health. He taught that if you want to find peace, you have to return again and again to now. Not yesterday, not someday, now. This is what we call mindfulness, or in Pali, sati. And I can tell you from my own life, it changes everything. You don't have to go to a temple to practice mindfulness. You don't have to sit cross-legged under a tree. You can practice mindfulness while you're washing the dishes, while you're walking through your garden, while you're sipping a warm cup of tea. It simply means this being fully here, paying attention not in a tense or serious way, but in a gentle, open-hearted way. It means you listen to your breath, you feel your feet on the ground, you notice the sound of the wind or the rhythm of your heartbeat. You become aware of what's happening without judgment, without rushing to change it. Let me give you a story that many teachers love to tell. A student once asked a great Zen master, "What is enlightenment?" And the master replied, "When I eat, I eat. When I walk, I walk. When I sleep, I sleep." The student looked confused. "But don't we all do that?" The master smiled. "No. When you eat, your mind is on other things. When you walk, you're planning your day. When you sleep, your mind is still racing. But I am fully present. That's the difference. That's mindfulness." And here's something I've noticed over the years. As we grow older, we begin to value the now more than we used to. We realize that time moves quickly, that we can't take moments for granted. And mindfulness becomes not just a practice, but a blessing. Because when we're present, life becomes rich. The food tastes better. The air smells sweeter. The sound of a grandchild laughing, the touch of a breeze, the warmth of sunlight on your face, it all becomes a gift. And more than that, the present moment becomes a safe place, a place you can trust. Think about it. The future, it's not here yet. The past, you can't change it. But this moment, this breath is it's real. It's where life is happening. I've had students tell me, "But I don't know how to meditate. I get distracted," and I always say, "That's okay. Just come back. Come back to your breath. Come back to now. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to return." And slowly, like the tide shaping the shore, mindfulness begins to change us. We become calmer, kinder, less reactive, more grateful. We stop chasing and start being. So if you're tired, if life feels too fast, if you don't know where to turn, Come home to this moment. Breathe, feel, be, because no matter what changes, now is always available. It's always steady. It's always enough. Section 8. Faith in Buddhism Saddhā. Now let's talk about a word that people often misunderstand: faith. When you hear faith, what comes to mind for some? It means believing in something you can't see. For others, it means following rules or trusting authority. But in Buddhism, faith isn't blind. It's not about obedience. It's about trust based on experience. The word we use is saddha, a quiet, steady kind of faith. Not loud, not showy. It's like a small flame in the dark, gentle, but strong, and it lights the way when you don't know what's ahead. Saddhā is not about worshiping the Buddha like a god. It's about trusting the path he walked, trusting the teachings not because someone said so, but because they work, because they bring peace, because they make sense in your own heart. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man who wanted to study with a famous teacher. He asked, "Can you promise me that if I follow your path, I will be free from suffering?" The teacher looked at him and said, "No, I can't promise that, but I can promise that if you practice with sincerity, you'll understand your mind better. You'll suffer less, and little by little, you'll find your way." The young man thought for a while. Then he said, "That's enough. I trust that. That's saddha. It's not a guarantee. It's not a contract. It's a relationship between you and the truth. It's a kind of inner knowing that says, I don't have all the answers yet, but I trust this direction. I trust this feeling of peace. I trust what I've seen so far." And the beautiful thing is faith grows. It starts small, maybe just a feeling that meditation helps, or a moment of clarity during a walk, or a teaching that makes you stop and say, "Yes, that's true." Over time, these small moments become a deep confidence, not in magic, not in superstition, but in wisdom. Now, where do we place this faith? Traditionally, in Buddhism, we take refuge in what we call the three jewels. The Buddha, not just the man, but the example, the proof that awakening is possible. The Dharma, the teachings, the truth, the way things are. The Sangha, the community of practitioners, both monastic and lay, who walk this path together. When we say, "I take refuge," we're not escaping life. We're turning towards something steady, something that doesn't break when the world shakes. I remember one elderly woman who told me, "I've lost so many things in this life, but when I chant the name of the Buddha, I feel at home. Not because I expect him to save me, but because I remember that I am not lost." That's saddha. It's like planting a seed. You water it, care for it, and one day, it becomes a tree that shelters you in the storm. So if you've ever felt unsure, uncertain, or even afraid, that's okay. That's human, but don't let it stop you. Let your questions lead you deeper. Let your experiences guide you, and let your faith, however small, light the path beneath your feet. Because in a world of shifting sand, faith in the Dharma, in your own potential to awaken, is a trust no one can take from you. Not time, not death, not change. That kind of faith is freedom. Section 9. Letting go, the practice of non-attachment, Vairāgya. Let me begin this part with a soft truth. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means finally choosing peace over pressure. Now, I know letting go can sound like loss. For many of us, especially those who've lived a long life, we've already let go of so much. People we love, dreams we once had, our younger bodies, our former roles in life. So when someone says let go, it can sound like more grief. But in Buddhism, letting go isn't about throwing things away. It's about loosening the grip. It's about opening the hand that's been clenched for too long. The word we use is Vairāgya, non-attachment. Not disconnection, not coldness, but a gentle freedom from clinging. Let me share a story that has stayed with me for many years. There was a monk who had only one valuable possession, a beautiful ceramic bowl. He used it every day to collect food, to drink, and sometimes even just to admire. He cared for it deeply. One day, another monk asked him, "Do you ever worry that the bowl might break?" The monk smiled and said, Oh, I see it as already broken. The other monk looked surprised. But it's not broken. He replied, yes, but I know it will break one day, so I cherish it without clinging to it. That's non-attachment. It's the wisdom that says, everything I love is temporary, so I will love it deeply, without needing to own it forever. You see, clinging makes us afraid. We fear loss, so we try to control. We fear change, so we hold on tighter. But the tighter we hold, the more we suffer. Have you ever tried to hold water in your hand? If you squeeze too hard, it slips right through your fingers. But if you relax your hand, it stays. Non-attachment is like that. It allows us to live with open hands, not clenched fists. It doesn't make us love less. It makes us love more purely because our love is not tied to fear. Now, this doesn't mean we stop caring. It doesn't mean we walk away from people or responsibilities. It simply means we stop trying to make things permanent that were never meant to be. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, not because things are bad, but because we ask them to do what they cannot stay the same. So what do? We begin small. We watch our own hearts. When we feel ourselves clinging maybe to a memory, or a belief, or a person, we gently breathe. We say to ourselves, this, too, will change, and we loosen the grip. We practice with things like our routines, our habits, even our expectations. Can we allow life to shift without collapsing? Can we accept that others will grow and change too? It's not always easy, but over time we become more peaceful, less afraid, more at home in a world that moves. And something beautiful happens. When we let go of grasping, our hands become free to hold what is real, not forever, but for now, and that's enough. Section 10. Consequence. Real-world application. What can you trust in times of crisis? Let's be honest, some of the hardest times to talk about trust are during crisis. When everything feels like it's falling apart, what do we hold on to? When the doctor says, it's cancer. When the phone rings in the middle of the night. When the economy crashes. When war breaks out. When your child stops calling. When your partner forgets your name. These are not small things. These are life-shaking, heartbreaking storms. And in those moments, even the most faithful hearts can whisper, what now? I want you to know something important. Buddhism never promised that pain would disappear. It promises that wisdom can arise within the pain. And I have seen this again and again. I've sat with people in hospital beds who have found more peace in 1 week of mindful breathing than in 50 years of chasing success. I've known people who lost their homes and still found comfort by lighting a single candle and chanting softly. I've watched elderly monks smile after losing everything they owned in a fire because they said, now we begin again. What allowed them to do that? They weren't relying on what could be taken. They were relying on what cannot. Let me say that again. In times of crisis, trust what cannot be taken. What is that? Norben Wanamon. It's your breath, your awareness, your ability to return to this moment, your capacity for compassion, your practice, your choice to respond with presence instead of panic. One woman I met had lost her husband after 40 years of marriage. She was broken with grief, but every morning she would sit with a small photo of him, light incense, and simply breathe. She told me, I don't try to stop the tears. I just try to keep my heart open while they come. That is practice. That is real faith. You see, when crisis strips everything away, what remains is the truth. And Buddhism offers us this great gift. It teaches us to prepare before the storm comes. Not with fear, but with steadiness, with understanding, with inner resources that can't be stolen. The Noble Eightfold Path becomes your compass. Mindfulness becomes your anchor. Compassion becomes your response. Faith becomes your shelter. Let me offer a metaphor that I often give to those in turmoil. Imagine you are in a small boat and the sea gets rough. The sky is dark. The waves are high. You cannot control the storm, but you can hold the oars. You can steer with wisdom. You can breathe. You can stay calm. And when the storm passes, and it will, you will still be here. Not the same, but stronger. Because you trusted what matters. And here's the truth. Friends, everything you practice now will meet you later. when you need it most. The breath you pay attention to today will carry you when you're gasping for peace. The compassion you build today will guide you when someone else is in pain. The wisdom you nurture now will shine when darkness comes. So no matter what crisis may come, you are not empty-handed. You have the Dharma. You have the present moment. You have the strength that grows from within. And that, more than anything, is what you can trust when everything else falls away. Section 11. The paradox trusting in change itself. Now this may sound strange at first, but stay with me. What if the very thing we've feared change is the only thing we can truly rely on? I know that might feel like a contradiction, but in Buddhism, this is what we call a paradox, something that sounds confusing at first but turns out to be deeply true. Think about it this way. Everything around you changes. The seasons change. Your body changes. Your thoughts, your moods, your relationships, your circumstances, they all shift. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but they always move. You might say, well, that's the problem. But the Buddha would say, no, that's the path. Let me tell you a story. There was once a tree in the middle of a field. It was tall, strong, and proud. But when a great storm came, the tree stood rigid. It tried to resist the wind, and eventually, it snapped. Nearby, there was a small bamboo plant. It bent and swayed with the wind. It didn't fight, it didn't break, and when the storm passed, the bamboo was still standing. That bamboo teaches us something vital. Flexibility isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So many people spend their lives trying to make things stay the same, trying to stop time, trying to keep people from changing. But in the end, that's like trying to stop the tide with your hands. Instead, the Buddha invites us to flow with life, to trust in the movement, because when we stop fighting change, we begin to move with the current, not against it. And that's where peace lives. Let me say something gently. If things didn't change, we'd be stuck. If grief didn't change, we'd never heal. If bad habits didn't change, we'd never grow. If people didn't change, we'd never forgive. If we didn't change, we'd never awaken. So yes, everything changes, but that's not a reason to despair. It's the reason we have hope. It's because your mind can change, your heart can open, your fears can soften, that this path even exists. And here's something to consider. Isn't it comforting, in a way, that the pain you feel today won't last forever? That the sadness you carry will one day lighten, that even the hardest winter gives way to spring? When we begin to trust change, not fear it, we stop bracing ourselves all the time. We stop resisting life, and instead, we begin to dance with it. You don't have to like every change. Some will still hurt, some will still take your breath away, but underneath that, you can begin to say, even this is part of the path. Even this is teaching me something. So maybe the question isn't, how do I stop change? But how do I walk wisely with it? And that brings us to something even deeper. Two things that don't pass away. Two things that grow stronger with time. Wisdom and compassion. Let's look at them together. Section 12. What remains unshaken wisdom and compassion? You may be wondering, if everything changes, is there anything that lasts? Yes, there is. Not money, not even the body, but certain qualities, deep inner qualities, don't disappear. In fact, they grow stronger the more we practice. These are the things that hold steady even when life doesn't. I'm talking about wisdom and compassion. Let's begin with compassion. Compassion, or karuna, is that soft but powerful part of the heart that sees suffering and wants to help. It's what makes us sit beside someone who is grieving. It's what makes us forgive someone who's hurt us. It's what helps us be patient with ourselves when we make mistakes. Now here's the beautiful part. Compassion doesn't get old. Your knees may weaken. Your eyesight may fade. But your ability to feel love, to offer kindness, to be present for another person, that doesn't leave you. In fact, many people find that as they age, their hearts become even more tender. They don't get caught up in small things. They understand what matters. They carry a quiet warmth that only life experience can teach. I've seen this in monks, grandmothers, caretakers, widows, even strangers on a bus. When life humbles you, it opens you. And from that opening comes compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Now let's talk about wisdom. Wisdom, or panya, isn't about having all the answers. It's about seeing clearly. It's about knowing what leads to peace and what leads to suffering and choosing the path of peace. Wisdom doesn't come from reading books alone. It comes from watching life carefully. It comes from seeing that clinging causes pain, that letting go brings ease. It comes from realizing that everyone is doing their best, even when they fall short. It comes from understanding that life is brief and therefore precious. The Buddha once said that a wise person can turn even suffering into a teacher. That means when things fall apart, we don't ask, "Why me?" we ask, "What can I learn?" And that small shift right there is the heart of wisdom. And like compassion, wisdom grows with time. Every heartbreak, every mistake, every wrinkle on your face, it all becomes part of a deeper seeing. You stop needing to control everything. You stop judging so quickly. You become someone others can trust, someone whose presence is peaceful, even if you say nothing at all. Let me tell you one last story in this section. There was a very old monk who lived alone in a mountain hut. He had no possessions, no big temple, no followers, just a robe, a bowl, and a gentle smile. One day, a young man came to visit and asked, "How did you become so wise?" The old monk pointed to the tea kettle boiling over the fire. He said, "That kettle has boiled thousands of times. Sometimes the fire is strong, sometimes it's weak, but it keeps making tea. I just kept sitting, kept listening, kept letting life soften me. That's all." That's wisdom. That's compassion. And that's what stays. So if you want to know what to trust, not what can be broken, not what can be lost, then trust the qualities that grow with practice. Trust your own capacity to be kind, to be clear, to be awake. These are the treasures no one can take from you. Not even time, not even death. They are the fruit of the path, and they are already inside you, just waiting to bloom. Section 13. Community and continuity, trusting the Sangha. Let me ask you something from the heart. Have you ever gone through something difficult and felt completely alone? Maybe you had no one to talk to. Maybe you felt like no one really understood. That kind of loneliness can weigh heavier than grief itself. But now imagine this. What if, during that time, someone quietly sat beside you? They didn't try to fix anything. They didn't lecture or offer empty words. They just sat. Maybe they held your hand. Maybe they simply said, "I'm here." That presence, that quiet companionship is what we call Sangha. In Buddhism, the Sangha is the spiritual community. It includes monks, nuns, teachers, but also you, me, anyone who is walking the path of awakening with sincerity and care. It's one of the three jewels we take refuge in: Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Because we cannot walk this path alone, not all the way. We need others to help us see ourselves clearly. We need others to encourage us when we stumble. We need others to remind us, gently, of what we've forgotten. And sometimes, just being near someone who is practicing, someone who is living kindly, quietly, honestly, is enough to calm our hearts. I've seen this countless times. I've seen elderly men who never once opened a book on Buddhism, but who bow silently every morning before a small Buddha statue and offer a flower. I've seen teenagers sitting in meditation next to their grandparents, breathing together in stillness. I've seen communities gather after floods and fires, not just to rebuild homes, but to rebuild each other. That's Sangha. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be formal. Sometimes your Sangha is one friend, one teacher, one small group of people who sit in silence once a week. Sometimes it's just a neighbor who greets you with kindness. And let me say this too, you don't always have to receive support. Sometimes you're the one offering it. Your practice, your steady breath, your calm presence, your gentle words can become someone else's refuge. We all take turns. Sometimes we're the ones being held. Sometimes we do the holding. That's how the Dharma continues. Not through temples alone, not through ancient texts, but through people living, breathing people who carry the teachings in their hearts and actions. In fact, one of the greatest blessings of aging is that you become part of the thread that connects generations. You become a bridge, a keeper of wisdom, a quiet elder that others look to not for answers, but for presence. So if you've ever felt alone on this path, I want you to know you're not. Right now, across the world, there are people waking up before dawn to meditate, people lighting candles, people reciting the same chants you know, people sitting in silence, asking the same questions. We may be in different places, speaking different languages, but we are walking together. And that, dear friend, is something you can trust. Even if your family doesn't understand, even if your friends are on a different path, the Sangha is real, it's living, and it welcomes you, just as you are. So when your strength feels low, lean into it. Let it carry you a little. And when you have strength, offer it to others. That is the way we keep going together. Conclusion. Ikrar in entido searchamos, what can you trust on? Trumani wane de shekin sheks in the yomonavasum. Now we come to the heart of it all. We've walked through many rooms together in this long conversation. We've spoken about impermanence, loss, fear, courage, breath, community, practice, and love. And all along the way, we've returned to this one question. If everything changes, what can you trust? And here is the answer, my friend. You can trust the Dharma the way life truly works, not how we wish it worked. The truth that things arise and pass, that actions bring consequences, that the heart can awaken. You can trust the path, those 8 steps that help you walk with wisdom, no matter what storm comes. Not a path of perfection, but a path of progress, a path that holds your hand. You can trust the present moment, this breath, this body, this quiet now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but this moment, which always welcomes you home. You can trust your mindfulness, your compassion, your wisdom, the qualities that don't fade with time, but ripen. You can trust the Sangha, your fellow travelers, near and far, the kind eyes, the steady hearts, the ones who walk beside you, even in silence. And above all, you can trust yourself, not the self that clings or fears, but the self that observes, that softens, that wakes up, the part of you that has always known there is something deeper, that quiet watcher behind all thoughts, behind all change. Let me leave you with a final image. Imagine a man caught in a flood. The water rises quickly. His house is shaking. Everything he owned is washing away. And suddenly, he sees a mountain in the distance. High, still, unmoving. He doesn't have a map. He doesn't know how long it will take. But he begins to swim not because he has certainty, but because he has trust. Trust that the mountain is real. Trust that each stroke gets him closer. Trust that he was not meant to drown. That mountain is the Dharma. That swimmer is you. And the journey is still unfolding. So, dear friend, keep swimming, keep walking, keep breathing. Because in this ever-changing world, you are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be. And you are not alone. May you walk with clarity. May you live with courage. May you trust, not in what changes, but in what awakens. This is the gift of the path. This is what you can trust.